The story kicks off by introducing us to a fraudulent property dealer named Stan. He used to deceive people by selling cheap properties at super high prices and had made millions of dollars through this. Stan had everything he could wish for: a luxurious house, expensive cars, and a beautiful loving wife named Mindy. However, one day, the police arrested Stan for his fraudulent activities, and he was sentenced to 3 years in jail by the court. But Stan, in an attempt to escape imprisonment, asks his lawyer to bribe the judge. However, the evidence and witnesses against Stan are so substantial that even the judge cannot save him. However, the judge grants him a 6-month period to take care of any personal matters before serving his sentence in jail. Outside the court, Stan's lawyer advises him to flee the country and settle somewhere else, but all of Stan's money had been frozen by the bank, and he didn't want to leave the country without his money. Later, Stan and Mindy are having dinner at a restaurant. Mindy tells Stan that she wants a child so that she doesn't feel alone when Stan is in jail. However, Stan doesn't like the idea of having a child. He says they can have a child, but what will they do with the child when he returns after 3 years? Children are permanent, it would be better for them to get a dog. Upon hearing this, Mindy gets upset and leaves the restaurant. Later on, Stan heads to a bar to grab a drink, and there sits a powerful man with a tattoo on his hand that says Property of State Prison. To learn more about the jail, Stan strikes up a conversation with him and gives him $100. The man tells Stan that the guards in the jail don't care about what the prisoners do to each other. Observing at Stan's weak physique, he warns him that the powerful inmate's gonna rape him all day, and no one will be there to protect him. As a piece of advice, he suggests that Stan get himself inked with a tough-looking tattoo. In response, Stan reveals that he already has a tattoo, but it turns out that it's the tattoo of his mother, which doesn't really make him look tough. Then, the man advised Stan if he want to survive in jail, he needs to beat up the most powerful inmate on his very first day to establish dominance. But Stan wonders how on earth he could possibly do that. Then, when Stan woke up the next morning, he was filled with a sense of relief, thinking that it had all been nothing more than a dream. However, Mindy quickly reminded him that the prospect of going to jail was indeed a reality. Stan felt sad upon hearing this, but being a solution-oriented person, he made a decision that he will become the father of Bruce Lee in the next 6 months. He even began preparing himself mentally and physically for the possibility of facing assault in jail. He then joins a karate class, but due to his stupid actions, he managed to get himself kicked out on the very first day. Outside, Stan encounters a man who introduces himself as the master, who effortlessly breaks a concrete wall with a single punch. Completely awestruck, Stan decides that he wants to learn kung fu from this extraordinary individual. He brings the master home, but Mindy doesn't seem particularly fond of his presence. On the first day of training, the master abruptly awakens Stan at 5 a.m. by splashing drops of blood on him, and the training begins. Along with training, Master prepares various juices made from different species of animals for Stan to consume. The Master's training is challenging. Sometimes he hits Stan's stomach with burning sticks, and other times he clips and hangs him from delicate areas. In terms of food, Stan is only given insects and worms. Due to the Master's unconventional methods, Mindy reaches her breaking point and asks Stan to kick the Master out of their house. That night, in a state of panic, Stan rushes to Mindy and informs her that burglars have broken into their home and have killed the Master. He further claims that they pose a grave threat to both of them, including the horrifying prospect of rape. Upon hearing this, Mindy becomes extremely frightened, but Stan reveals that it was all just a prank to make her understand what he was going through. Mindy becomes extremely upset at Stan's joke and breaks up with him and swiftly leaves the house. With Mindy gone, Stan becomes quite sad, but the Master seems extremely pleased. Over the course of the following 5 months, Stan dedicated himself to intense training and eventually became a dangerous fighter. To test his abilities, Stan pays a visit to the very same karate teacher who had previously kicked him out. Stan easily knocks the fuck out of the teacher. Finally, the day arrives for Stan's imprisonment. As all the prisoners are being transported to the jail in a bus, a fellow criminal sitting next to Stan tries to provoke him. However, Stan quickly puts him in his place. Using his newfound skills, he easily beats that inmate. Upon their arrival at the jail, they are greeted by Warden Gaisk, who lays out 2 important rules. First, not to bother the guards, or else they will bother them in return, and second, not to attempt to escape, otherwise they are gonna get shot at sight. However, the prisoners are assured that whatever they do among themselves doesn't concern the authorities. Later, when Stan enters his cell, he encounters Larry, who is assigned to be his cellmate. Stan threatens Larry to give him the upper bunk, but when he learns that Larry used to masturbate on his bed, Stan returns the bed to him. Then, outside, Stan inquires Larry about the most powerful man in the jail. Larry informs him that Big Raymond is the strongest inmate whom all the gangs fear. He often troubles and beats people and even commits rape. Stan approaches Raymond and openly challenges him for a fight in front of everyone. Raymond becomes furious, but Stan, with his techniques, easily overpowers him and breaks all his fingers, humiliating him in front of everyone. Witnessing this, the leader of the white group extends a hand of friendship to Stan, but Stan beats him as well for no reason. Then members of the black group come to seek revenge on behalf of Raymond, but Stan puts them onto their place too by beating the shit out of them. The guards witness all of this from the top but do nothing. On his first day in jail, Stan establishes such dominance that all the inmates tremble in fear when they see him, and they clear the path for him wherever he goes. Stan begins to be known as Big Stan. Then, Robbie, a fellow inmate, approaches Stan to express gratitude for saving his life from Raymond the previous day. However, Stan tells him that he did all this for himself and not to help anyone else. The next day, the warden calls Stan to his office and reveals that he purposely brought Stan to his jail because he wanted to take over the entire jail property. As Stan was a fraud property dealer, the warden proposes a deal that if Stan manipulates the jail property documents in warden's name, the warden will release him within a year. Stan finds the idea appealing but asks how he would shut down the jail. However, for now, warden keeps this a secret. The next day, all the gang members teams up and gather in the bathroom to plan Stan's murder. However, Stan skillfully overpowers them and beats them badly. Afterward, Stan misses Mindy and contacts his lawyer to inquire about her. The lawyer reveals that Mindy has yet to file for divorce, indicating that there might still be a chance for them. From the next day onwards, Stan begins assisting the warden in his property fraud scheme, and there is also a gangster who aids the warden. Listening to their conversations, Stan discovers that the warden's plan is to open fire during a violent altercation among the prisoners, causing significant casualties and ultimately compelling the government to shut down the jail. Stan decides that he will save the lives of all the inmates, even if they thirst for his blood. The next day, Stan gathers all the inmates and implements new rules. Firstly, he removes all the fighting games and movies that had a negative impact on them. Then, he announces that harassment, bullying, and any form of coercion are strictly prohibited, and all sexual interactions must be based on mutual consent. Upon hearing this, Big Raymond forms a relationship with a fellow prisoner and eventually, a positive change occurs in the jail as inmates stops fighting with each other and starts living happily together. Even if any conflicts arises, Stan intervenes and resolves the matter. One day, Stan receives a letter from Mindy, expressing forgiveness and her desire to meet him. The next day, Mindy visits Stan, and they cherish joyful moments together. On the other hand, by witnessing prisoners' non-violent nature, the warden becomes furious on Stan's actions. He sends the guards to bring Stan to his office. The warden threatens Stan with dire consequences, such as killing or life imprisonment, if he causes any trouble for the warden's plan of taking possession of the jail property. Stan's lawyer also advises him to comply with the warden's demands to ensure his eventual release from jail. The next day, Stan informs all the inmates that they can handle their own conflicts and that his rules are no longer necessary. Upon hearing this, the prisoners return to their default nature of fighting. As a result, Larry becomes upset with Stan and starts to leave, but Stan grabs his hand and whispers to him to stay away from wiring fence during the afternoon. Larry realizes that Stan is being forced into something against his will. Consequently, Larry secretly informs the other inmates about Stan's situation. The next day, determined to save the lives of the inmates and expose the warden's plan, Stan pretends to be a worthless prisoner during his meeting with the high-ranking officers. His intention is to quickly leave the room and alert the other inmates about the warden's brutal plan. However, on his way out, he is intercepted by the gangster who reveals that he too learned kung fu from the master. A dangerous fight ensues between the two, with the gangster initially overpowering Stan, but soon Stan manages to knock him out. Meanwhile, all the other inmates, due to their violent nature, gather with weapons, ready to fight with each other, while the guards are prepared to open fire. But unexpectedly, the prisoners start dancing to a Mexican song, and even the guards and higher-ranking officers starts enjoying the beat. Witnessing the plan unravel, Warden seizes a guard's gun and recklessly opens fire at the prisoners. The higher-ranking officers, witnessing this, warn the warden that he will have to go to jail. Frustrated and burning with revenge, the warden points the gun towards Stan. However, just before the warden can harm Stan, Mindy arrives just in time and saves him. It turns out that Mindy, too, had learned kung fu from the master during those 6 months. Then the scene shifts 3 years later, and it is the day of Stan's release from jail. All the prisoners become emotional upon witnessing Stan's departure, and one of them even gets a tattoo of Stan on his body. After being released from jail, Mindy and the master arrive to pick up Stan, along with a 3-year-old baby. And with this scene, the movie comes to an end. The rating of this movie is 6.1 and I think it's perfect. Hope you enjoyed the explanation. See you in the next video. Till then, take care and goodbye.